This is an analysis from Alpha Business Media. Today, we're digging into Nepal's economic strategy and asking a really critical question. What happens when this supposed cure is actually the poison?
It's a powerful idea, right? We're going to unpack this paradox, how policies that are designed to save an economy can, well, end up strangling it instead.
And in Nepal's case, we're looking specifically at their import restrictions. Now, these were put in place for what seemed like good reasons, but as you'll see, they're creating a hidden problem that might be far more dangerous in the long run.
All right, so let's get right into it. The core of the problem, the thing that kicked this all off, was a very real, very legitimate crisis. The country's foreign exchange reserves were drying up.
You see, after the pandemic, there was this big consumption boom, and it drained those forex reserves down to some really worrying levels. So the government did what you might expect, really. They took a two-pronged approach: tighten the money supply and restrict imports. The goal? Simple. Stop dollars from flying out of the country.
And on the surface, the logic seems sound, right? If you want to stop dollars from leaving, just ban the import of things that cost dollars. But here's the catch. This policy has unleashed a much sneakier, more insidious threat called cost-push inflation. Now, this isn't your typical inflation where there's too much money chasing too few goods. No, this is different. This is when the cost of producing things, the raw materials, the parts, goes up, forcing prices up for absolutely everyone.
And this analogy just hits the nail on the head. It's like a starving man sewing his mouth shut to save energy. I mean, think about it. You're trying so hard to strengthen your external position, your forex reserves, but you're doing it by completely weakening your internal economy. It's a classic case of winning the battle but losing the war.
So you've got this first problem, right? But it gets worse. Because while the government was banning imports, the central bank decided to step in with its own set of tools. And this, right here, is where a bad situation started to get really dangerous.
What happened next was this absolutely brutal double squeeze on businesses. Imagine being an entrepreneur in Nepal right now. On one side, the cost of your essential raw materials is skyrocketing because of those import bans. And then, on the other side, the central bank jacks up interest rates so the loan you need just to buy those expensive materials also costs a fortune. You're getting squeezed from both ends with nowhere to go.
And you don't have to be an economist to see where this leads. It's a predictable and really dangerous chain reaction. Businesses under this kind of pressure, they're not expanding, they're not hiring, they're cutting back production. And that slowdown, that contraction, puts you on a direct path to stagflation, that absolute worst-case scenario of a stagnant economy mixed with soaring inflation.
So here's the real takeaway from this section. The central bank was using the wrong tools for the job. Hiking interest rates is a demand-side tool. It's meant to cool down an overheating economy. But this wasn't a demand crisis. It was a supply crisis caused by the import bans. Raising interest rates doesn't make steel cheaper or magically create more raw materials. All it does is make it even harder for your own local businesses to survive.
Okay, so if the current strategy is, well, not working, what's the alternative? Is there a better way? Turns out, there is. And for that, we just have to look at a neighbor in the region who wrote a completely different playbook.
It really boils down to two completely different philosophies. You can either be on the defense, crouching down, trying to save every single dollar you have by restricting everything, or you can go on the offense with a strategy focused on one thing: earning new dollars through exports.
Bangladesh, well, they chose to go on the offense. They looked at their strengths, identified their huge potential in ready-made garments, and then they went all in. We're talking about building an entire national ecosystem around it. Duty-free imports for raw materials, special economic zones, the whole shebang. They understood a fundamental truth. You cannot save your way to prosperity. You have to earn it.
And the results? I mean, they speak for themselves. We're talking over $45 billion a year in garment exports alone. That's not just a successful industry. That's the bedrock of a national economy that's been running circles around its neighbors for years.
So, the lesson here for Nepal is incredibly clear and is profound. It's time to stop playing defense and find its own ready-made garment sector. It needs to find that one thing and reorient its entire economic policy around making it a massive success.
And what could that be for Nepal? Well, the answer is pretty obvious: hydropower. We're not talking about a small-scale industry here. Hydropower has the sheer scale and, frankly, the geopolitical importance to solve this forex problem for good. Think about it. Its raw material is water, flowing right from the Himalayas. It's sovereign, it's renewable, it never runs out. This isn't just a resource, it's a world-class strategic asset.
But to make this happen, it requires a complete 180-degree shift in thinking. You have to move from a mindset of import restriction to one of strategic export subsidization, specifically in energy. That means the government actively uses its power to fast-track projects, to provide guarantees that de-risk private investment, to go out and secure long-term buyers, and crucially to invest heavily in the infrastructure needed to get that power to market.
So this brings us to a crossroads. This necessary pivot forces a moment of truth, really, creating two very, very different potential futures for Nepal.
For anyone in business or investing in the region, it comes down to these two scenarios. On one path, scenario A, you have the strategic pivot. Yes, there's going to be some short-term pain as things readjust, but it leads to long-term investor confidence and a real industrial revival, all powered by a clear energy strategy. Then there's scenario B, the hesitant muddle. This is the path of half measures of bureaucracy and reactive policy, which almost certainly leads to another lost decade of low growth and high inflation.
And let's be perfectly clear. Choosing the strategic path is not going to be easy. It's going to be politically difficult, and in the short term, the cure will probably feel worse than the disease. But here is the most important point of all. Sticking with the current policy isn't a strategy for stability. It's not a safe choice. It is, plain and simple, a managed decline. Which brings us to the final, defining question for Nepal. Is it going to be a painful but ultimately necessary pivot towards real, lasting prosperity? Or is it going to be a slow, managed decline into economic irrelevance? The choice made now will absolutely define the country's future for generations.